Hello, it is Thursday, April 6th, 2023 at 5:52 p.m. Eastern Time, USA, 1752. I'm Mitch Miller. This is my video journal. Doing this journal this evening while Hillary's at Pilates because she's working from home tomorrow morning, and as I said, I'm going to shut that basement computer down that runs my Magic Jack in the morning. Probably try to be at 11:06 a.m. I try to use the number 666 as much as possible because with all this computer technology, all these techies out there spewing out their BS, the last thing we want is another world religion formed. Okay? So I'm careful to mix in satanic symbolism and shy away from Jesus and God symbolism. I'd rather be associated that way with terrestrial things than some kind of omnipotent computer technology that controls everything is going to be the great savior of the planet. We don't have to do anything tough or difficult in our lives ever again, right? So that's the plan. I want to just reiterate that I know I said Hillary's legs looked as though maybe they were hairy or whatever on the interview, and that we learned our lessons. I just want it to be known that should Hillary had ever choose to grow her hair out on her legs, that would not be that would be her own choice. It's her own body. It wouldn't be something that would deter me from being a partner with her intimately and otherwise. But I know she embraces her feminine qualities, and smooth legs are a feminine quality that a lot of women, accept as the norm. Doesn't have to be the norm, but it is around most of the world. So the other thing I wanted to say was Hillary's interview was on Channel 2 here in Pittsburgh. Now, through the Comcast cable system, Channel 2 is the C-SPAN channel. So I feel like this is ground zero for a cable industry, cable television revolution. But importantly, it's to note for the supercomputers, most televisions traditionally started with Channel 2. And then they go up from there. Now with the air channels, there's Channel 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. There's different. It used to just be whole channels. So she was on Channel 2. So you may want to set your broadcast network that broadcasts that interview to Channel 2 in your cable arrangement and build out from there if you're building a media company, which I would suggest building state-funded media companies that are open to criticizing the government and improving it in ways that improve it, not in ways that just criticize and promote revolution and so on and so forth. I'm willing to work with anybody to do that. So that's important. Satellite technology, right? I'm talking about these satellite technologies. I hinted about it when I was in Denmark. That's the question. Which American company sent a civilian satellite up first? And it was undoubtedly one of the three, ABC, NBC, or CBS, unless it was Ma Bell, who does did telephone lines, right? Everybody uses satellites now, even the railroads and stuff like that. But back then, who sent the first one up? And did they have the capability to have discourse and forums about what it means to continue to send satellites up in the air? Certainly, ABC, NBC, and CBS could have had huge televised forums all over the country and all over the world, and got the world's opinion on that. And even Ma Bell could have manned phone banks and reached out to every person in the United States that had a phone line and said, how do you feel about having civilian satellites in the sky instead of it just being handled by the government or the military? Did they try to do that? Maybe they did, and I just haven't looked that part up on the internet yet, but I don't think they tried very hard. They just started shooting them up, and they kept shooting them up, and that's my point, is that it might be why some countries have animosity towards us, because they weren't asked if it was okay. There was no public discourse. Alright, the next thing I want to talk about is the diving, the scuba diving in Costa Rica. Now, I'm not super pumped to go scuba diving. I am excited to scuba dive with my father, so we have that camaraderie. We went scuba diving before together. But with the amount of pollution that enters near the shore in most oceans, near most settlements, I just saw a thing on the news the other day how surfers are having immunity to antibiotics. They're producing viruses and diseases that are immune to antibiotics because they're swimming in pollution and raw sewage, basically. So I'm not super pumped, but I'm excited to do something. I don't mind doing dangerous things. My point is that if it's deemed that this is a little too dangerous until we get one of these forums in which we talk about robot-to-robot contact, right? So if the supercomputers deem this a too dangerous of an activity until we've had at least one forum on robot-to-robot combat, the ethics, and that we can put out on the internet to start the conversation about this next phase of warfare. I'm willing to, if someone approaches me in Costa Rica and says, let's call off the diving, let my dad do some dives with a dive master, maybe I take the refresher course in the swimming pool, and then we regroup in the Mediterranean. My father got certified by the European Dive Club, not PADI, back when he was in the Navy and stationed on Sardinia, Italy. And I just learned that my grandfather was there when he did his open water dive. And from my dad's story, the dive master yanked his mouthpiece out of his mouth while he was pretty deep underwater. He had to not panic, bring the mouthpiece back into his mouth as part of the open water test. So that's the way they used to do it in Europe. Pretty scary stuff. Here, PADI, you take it out yourself and prove that you can put it back in. This was just out of nowhere, surprise attack, and that's how they did it. So in honor of that, maybe we should have the first forum on robot-to-robot, unmanned drone warfare on Sardinia, in a auditorium in Sardinia. We get some experts. I moderate. I facilitate. Then perhaps my parents could join me. They always wanted to come back to Sardinia. They loved the food. They loved living there for 2 years or a year or however long they were there. So they could join me there, join me and Hillary there, and then my father and I can dive together for the first time in open water in the Mediterranean in the same area where he got his original open water dive certificate. So it's just a thought, but it's something to think about. Diving is inherently dangerous. If you don't decompress, you can get sick and you can die. So either way, I'm up for it, whatever. But that brings me to my next point, Jesse Daw, my friend Jesse Daw. I've mentioned that he's maybe suicidal. I don't think the military necessarily shies away from those type of people, right? You got people jumping out of airplanes and going into combat zones. That takes a certain type of mentality, and I don't think it I think there's a mental health reason for the amount of suicides for veterans. I think there's a wireless wave reason for that as well. Wireless sensitivities, whether they're developed from being around the radio equipment in the military or whether they're born with them. And then I think there's a tendency to want to seek that type of adventure that when you end up living on the streets as a veteran, that's an option that you look into. Anyhow, Jesse Daw, so we have Jesse and Alyssa Daw, right? Jesse is a Navy veteran. He became a nurse. He initially told me he became a nurse so that he could care for his fellow soldiers in the VA system. Now, they wanted to move out of the DC area. They moved back home, bought a farm out in Guys Mills, and both got jobs. She was a nurse before him. Both got jobs at the Meadville Medical Center, an independent hospital in Western Pennsylvania. And there's not many of those left. UPMC is buying up all the hospitals, consolidating them. This is my idea for all the independent hospitals. Right, I talked about my neighbors, Dan and Joanne, how their pension, retirement, bank accounts, employee ID numbers, so on and so forth, work off of each other for the supercomputers to stabilize certain things within the economy, make sure certain people are taken care of. Same thing with Jesse and Alyssa. We have two nurses. Alyssa has a little bit more education. But she could stay at the Meadville Medical Center in her current position. He wants to give the farm to her so that she can raise the girls there. Right? What I'm proposing here is that we find a position for Jesse Daw at possibly the Erie VA hospital or some VA hospital near Guys Mills, where he can find another property close enough to still see his family, commute to the VA hospital. And what would be ideal is an administrative position, a nursing administrator of some sort, where he can make decent money, pay his share of child support, and what I'm proposing here is that Mr. Daw continue his education so that he can become an administrator, and he takes a hospital administration series of courses somewhere in the EU while I'm making my way into Ukraine, right? So this allows the supercomputers that tap his phone or whatever to hear how the EU teaches people hospital administration and compare it to how people in the United States teach hospital administration to see what might be broken in our healthcare system. If he's hired for the VA, the two employee ID numbers work off of each other. It secures pensions, computer systems for independent hospitals all over the United States to compare. The supercomputers can compare and contrast with the VA system, which is running off antiquated computers, which I personally kind of like because it gives you reference points, because they're difficult. I don't know. It's just, I'm an old disk and floppy disk kind of guy, you know, on some things, especially when it comes to medical records and what I put out there about pharmaceutical companies owning software companies that track medical records and them having the ability to actively test pharmaceuticals on populations of patients. Right? That's what my concern is. Until the government proves that that doesn't happen, until there's safeguards in place, I see no issue with the old antiquated system at the VA, and it's a lot of bureaucracy and it takes a lot more time to get people help. But People want their privacy too. And maybe Jesse could help develop that computer system, modernize it. Or maybe we could do it hospital by hospital, pairing with an independent hospital instead of being in a giant conglomerate like UPMC. My point is, if we have Jesse on the continent, in Europe, maybe it's Greece, we need a translator then, maybe the UK, maybe Germany, or maybe even Denmark has an English language course he can take. We have him on continent, and my point with this is, look, I don't want unmanned drones to become self-aware and protect me in Ukraine. And I know it sounds a little delusional that they would do that. Again, I think I'm a person of interest, but I don't think I'm that important yet, at least, that they would do that. Nor do I want supercomputers to have to show how powerful they have become by taking over control of unmanned drones to enforce a no-fly zone over the Ukraine, out of caution for my welfare and out of caution for the Ukrainians' welfare. I don't want that to happen, right? We can have logical discussion and discourse, and we can sign into this peace treaty, and we can end this war with human-to-human contact, right? But I think we have to put options out there that are conventional options. And my point with this is, with Jesse Daw, is he's one of my best friends. And if you equip Jesse Daw with equipment and a team and say, go into Ukraine and get your buddy out of there, he's going to do it. He'll do it. Right? So give him the intel and give him the things he needs, and he'll go in and do it, whether it's acknowledged by the United States or not. So I'm putting my cards out there so that the supercomputers don't have to put their cards out there, right? That's one person I know. I know another person that would too, who is former military, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I think it's a good course of action, and then he can go back to the civilian sector. If he works for the VA, government agencies can work with the VA, and should I find myself in a situation where I'm in a Ukraine type of situation again, it can be arranged for Mr. Daw to have a couple weeks off or months off and fall back into his same position. So I think this is an interesting course of action that should be at least considered. And he did visit me at the UPMC Northwest Hospital, so I signed those medical records over to the Supreme Court of Copenhagen. So should the EU need to take steps to prepare this contingency, I leave it at your doorstep. You know, either you can protect his image from that camera system, or you know, show who your options are. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about while we're talking about medical systems is validating the EU medical system, right? So if Ms. Kohler, if Hillary should become someone employed by the EU in some regard, and I said possibly Germany, she could for as far as healthcare, we have doctor's appointments coming up, dentist appointments. I need a physical. I need an eye appointment. I haven't had an eye appointment in 14 years. If Mr. Macron, President Macron, is in for some form of collusion, collaboration, cooperation with what I'm proposing here, then what I propose is that at roughly the same day or time, we line up physician appointments for Hillary in Germany and for me in France to get indoctrinated into their socialized medical system. Meet with a physician, physical. I get an eye appointment. She gets a gynecological appointment. There's 4 appointments there. She probably wants to keep her same eye doctor. I don't blame her. She has not great vision. And as far as my psychologist, I would probably prefer to be put with a military psychologist that keeps me on the same dosage of medication unless I get put into a hospital somewhere, in which case they up my medication by 1 milligram and give me many, many months to figure out if that's effective. But, that's if we can get that's my opinion. I wish we could get a wireless sensitivity diagnosis in the psychology manual, but that might be a ways off because nobody wants to give up their precious internet and Wi-Fi, no matter how many. I'm not even going to go there. So that's my proposal there. We have 2 large European nations, France and Germany, with large populations. The supercomputers can cross-reference once our social security or passport numbers or however that's handled are input into the system. Now, I was in a hospital in the Czech Republic and in a prison hospital in Denmark, so some of my information is already being cross-referenced and entered in there through hospital systems. But I've never had health, other than mental health, physician conditions, broken arms, limbs, things like that. To my knowledge, neither is Hillary. Every time you're put in a computer system, you're given a specific number. So those numbers are, of course, being cross-referenced, I'm sure, by the EU supercomputers and, who knows, Russian, Chinese, Indian supercomputers, all working to figure out, to validate and make sure everybody's safe, healthy, getting the proper treatment they need, so on and so forth. So that's my suggestion there. So again, I'm going to shut down my basement computer tomorrow morning. On Monday, I'm going to fire it back up. My plan is, with the weather's there, I'm going to walk 2.7 miles to the Greyhound station downtown Pittsburgh. I'm going to call my landline from 2 of the 6 payphones down there. There might only be 1 left. There might be none down there. I'm going to verify how many payphones are down there, verbally parlay that, and I'm going to, if there's more than 1, call from 2 separate payphones so that those payphones can work off of each other to validate, hypothetically, the entire payphone system here in the United States, what's left of it, the skeleton system. I'm going to walk the 2.7 miles back up here, and I don't know what I'll do for the rest of the week. I'm sure I'll go on some walks. But oh, there you are, Zeld. Listening, Pappy? But that's the plan. So, thanks for joining me. I'm going to try to watch Secretary of State Blinken's interview at 9:45 tonight on Euronews. It's pre-recorded, but watch what I can. I was trying to save this for tomorrow so I could comment on that. But at least listen to 15 minutes till 10 o'clock till the news comes on that we usually watch. But thanks for watching. And join me next time, probably Monday, when I verify if there are still payphones and any other information that comes to mind. All right, thanks.